gonna try to move away from our crutch to then be able to eventually and hopefully go without it. After at most 30 minutes that cleanup's initiated, it doesn't have 30 minutes isn't a hard and fast rule. It can be a little bit sooner if you feel like the child's starting to melt down. We always want to end on a positive note, so we want to kind of end it when we're feeling that that's happening. For the cleanup routine, everybody throws away or interacts with a piece of the food one at a time. So if I have green beans, I have chicken nuggets, and I have mashed potatoes on my plate. I don't have to throw all of the green beans away or put them all in a bin. I have to do at least just one, and I can use a tool if I need to. However, the child feels most comfortable with the interaction of that. But what that does is it gives that opportunity for one last interaction with the demands of eating it, or not the demands, but I think more, the way I thought of it is like more of like an internal demand, like the kid knows if it's being thrown away that the expectation of eating it's gone, it's off the table. But it gives that opportunity for one last interaction of like, maybe instead of touching it with just my fork, maybe I'll pick it up with my hand and throw it away. So we want to either throw it away or you can blow it away, depending on kind of what the child is comfortable with. We do a lot of like, we do a lot of pirate ship cannons, so like maybe a cheese ball in that, then we blow it off and it blows into the other pirate ship, which is the trash can then. That's a really good way, again, kind of getting that final step in.
And the child like can decide. So you're giving them options and they choose what they want to do. You're not saying like, okay, we're gonna do this.
Right.
Yeah.
I don't, like you said, like the cleanup changes it. Like Arthur won't touch half the stuff on his plate, but then when it comes to cleanup, he's putting it in his mouth and spitting it. But he won't go near it the whole time. Or
Right.
like not even with his hands.
I think it's because the demand's off. Like at that point, like not even the
And we do
expectation
it
of the
every
room,
time,
but
yeah.
consistency, and then it's like, oh well, if I'm throwing it away, then I don't have to eat it.
Yeah.
And it's similar. He'll do so much more when we're throwing it away. Like,
Yeah.
remember that day he was like spitting things out that he would have never put in his mouth.
Yeah.
Because we were throwing it away.
Right.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I think cleanup's my favorite part of all of it. It's like, okay, let's see what we can do. Let's see what happens next. And then the final step is that child bringing the plate and the leftover food to the counter, to the sink, or whatever your cleanup routine is with your family. So they recommended meal times limiting it to 15 to 30 minutes at most. And then after cleanup, the kitchen is closed and only water comes out of the kitchen after. And that's not to say it's only between the 3 meals a day, because the ideal food intake ratio is like breakfast, snack, lunch, snack, dinner, and then I think a snack, and a snack after that. But it's like that in between time we want to just have water come out of the kitchen after that. In every meal there needs to be at least one preferred food. So kind of like we talked about, the family meals, their goal is volume. We have to keep the kid growing and keep the kid alive to continue to work on these things. So if Stacy's favorite food is cheese balls, everybody in that family mealtime is going to have cheese balls on their plate. It's going to be something that not only is a child eating, kind of going back to what I said about it, if it's on my plate, then the child's more likely to eat about that too. So kind of giving that whole unity kind of feeling. So if green beans are on mine, cheese balls are on her, it's going to be both on the same on every plate. Several foods on the table for increased exposure. And then the best way to keep a kid at the table, I didn't add this one to the handout, but as I was kind of going back and adding notes on, I remembered that I really liked this too. But the best way to keep a kid at the table, especially those kids that just kind of keep getting up and they keep running away, is to fix the chair, number one. And then they encourage to teach the routine. But then something else I thought was really cool is teach the kid how to move the food versus moving their body. So it's like, if Carson doesn't want this water, we need to teach him how to push it away versus Carson's going to get up and run away. And I think that is a really cool way to look at it too, because it's like one of those things that's like such a, I'm sorry.
It's okay. Totally fine.
Such like a simple thing that we think about, but these kids that don't know that they can push the food away, they don't know. They talked about also for babies in high chairs to take away the tray and push the baby up to the seat with everybody. I think it was really early on. It was like 9 months, 10 months, something like that. And they want them to be part of like the table because it gives a little bit more room to push away. But then also it's just the idea of the unity of it also as well. All right. Reinforcement is the third kind of general treatment strategy that they kind of outlined. And it talks about that number one, verbal praise from the parents is in the appropriate quantities is the best. It creates the parent reinforcement value to kind of drive some of that intrinsic motivation then. So some of the appropriate amounts may be like simple observations. It may be like, oh, you really tried to eat that green bean. Or you really, wow, you took a really big, strong bite out of that. Something very similar like that. Same with like the praising efforts. We want to say like, oh, you really tried to chew that up. I see that it was really hard, but great work for trying hard. You can do hard things. We want to avoid comparison praises. So, oh wow, you ate that so much more than your brother did. We want to try to steer clear from the comparison. And then also steer clear from the person praises. So, oh, you're such a good boy. Oh, you're such a good girl. We want to kind of direct and give it some more value into what they're doing is what they're actually doing. So, like that the fact that the action that they did was a good effort. And then the other thing that they had mentioned with the person praises is like if you suggest that they're being a good boy, that means that they could also be a bad boy. So it's kind of just like the cognitive language you have to be aware of. We want to work on the reinforcement of the siblings as well. We want the validation for everybody in the room, but without using the guilt. So just again that constant or the appropriate amounts of the verbal praise for everybody involved without saying, oh, you're doing so much better than the other one. And we want to reinforce any adaptive food behavior. If Meredith's really uncomfortable and can tolerate green beans on a plate that's like over here for the first time, or if she's even tolerating this at all, we're like, hey Meredith, you did a really great job being close to that green bean today, or whatever that is. Playing with foods is reinforcing in and of itself, while also addressing the desensitization of the touching and the interactions with the foods. So even just the idea of using play is great. SOS does not recommend using any other foods or objects as reinforcement. It doesn't kind of touch on that intrinsic motivation or understanding. That it's more of that external motivating factor, and they just see more results with the intrinsic drive. If it's needed, using disappearing objects such as like bubbles can be a really great tool for that too, or bubbles, or even like the way I took it is even like playing like peekaboo with an object, where you can hide it and then it can kind of disappear back into Davis with that. So then the fourth general strategy that they talk about is accessing the cognition. This was a really, really cool kind of reminder of all of these things in different cognitive levels. And I think that it's also important to remember that in moments of stress, people, adults and children, will drop down at least one cognitive level. So SOS really focuses on the sensory motor and the pre-logical phases, because a lot of the times that the kids that they're working with, although chronologically they may be in the age of the logical or the concrete operations or the abstract, they're going to drop down to a lower cognitive level when interacting with the foods. So for the sensory motor level of cognition, those kiddos need to physically manipulate the food to understand it. So we need to do basic common play, and decreasing the language and utilizing vocalization. So like scoop, pour, bang, bang, in, out, dumping, using food to jump around, sound effects, peekaboo, anything that is just at that very basic level of that's how we're accessing that child's cognition to then help get them engaged in the food play as well. The pre-logical phase is those are the magical thinkers. They use imaginary play to understand foods. So with that, we're gonna turn food into preferred play schema. Oh, maybe the carrot is Marshall going to put out the fire, or maybe the peas are bowling balls that we're rolling down the alley, something along those lines. In this pre-logical phase, we need to work on building the bridges of cognition and begin the simple teachings of how the body works. So they had suggested using a food in a food chopper to then chomp up the foods like we eat the foods we chop it up with our mouth. So that food chopper can manipulate or imitate what our mouth is doing. The logical phase or the logical stage, they still play, but they play differently. They'll use a lot of analysis experiments, putting the ideas together and taking them apart. So doing cooking activities with them, making hypotheses and testing them out. Using a science brain versus a judgment brain can be really helpful, and using that kind of language with them may be helpful as well. In that logical phase, we're going to look at, we don't like these kind of foods, what can we do to fix it, and help them learn about different condiments or different seasonings or different ways that we can look at foods and what we can do to maybe learn more about them in a different light. And then two other just quick things that I wanted to add on here that I found really interesting. Grazing. So the idea of grazing is a child that needs to eat sooner than every 2 to 2.5 hours. This just takes the edge off of hunger, and it significantly decreases the motivation and the drive to work on new foods. And those kids eat, I think it was like 51% less caloric intake than kids that don't graze, because they just like constantly, I'm gonna grab a couple chips and then I'm gonna grab a couple crackers, and just like that little bit, they're not actually ever getting hungry then. With that, when we're addressing the grazing, we don't ever just tell families to stop the grazing and just go to these meals, because we don't really work on things. Cold turkey, that's a big thing that they talk about in the SOS approach too. They suggested using the 1 more minute strategy and start really small. So if somebody's asking for a snack, just 1 more minute, let me put away these toys really quick. And then what they try to do is to kind of prolong it out a little bit more, and then if the kid asks about it again, okay, just maybe 1 more minute, let's go do this really quick. And they suggested using the 3 strikes rule. So if they ask for something 3 times in a row, then like you should probably get it on the 3rd one to kind of keep everybody happy and everybody nice and regulated, because again, they're feeling like they need to eat to then keep the hunger at bay. And then the last thing that I just wanted to bring up is preventing food jags. Food jags are food burnout, and you can only address food jags if the child has at least 5 proteins, 5 fruits and vegetables, and 5 starches. I think that that's something that's really important for our families to know to hear, because I think that food jags, at least in the patients that I've been seeing, food jags is almost like a buzzword, and they're starting to grasp onto that, like, I don't want him to jag on the food, or I don't want him to stop eating the food because it's one of the ones we got, so I'm going to change it up completely, and that's also not very helpful. So when you're addressing food jags, it's only if they have that many foods, and then the idea of how to prevent the food jags is only offering every one particular food every other day. So with that, what you would do is you would help the family kind of create a list, and then you'd help them create a menu and like how to fill in the mealtime, snack times, and just kind of play around with that a little bit. Then too.
Thank you. I know we don't have much time, but does anybody have any questions or like stories that they shared from patients you've had?
I can say for like the food jag, it's probably one of the hardest things to do, but the easiest way to do it is like, let's say your kid likes apples, you can make apple sticks, you can make apple slices, you can do a whole apple, and so like don't feel that because they only have 5 fruits, like you're gonna be stuck with only an apple once a day, because just changing the visual component is really important, because some of our kids are so rigid that like they will only eat apples in one form, and presenting it in different forms helps with that like flexibility and seeing the different and increasing that variety.
I also think that, I think there's a lot of really good things in this, and I think there's a lot of things that like are like pieces of what we're often doing, and it's like nice like reminders too, and like more information on them. I think that the talking about renaming the preferred foods when you change it too is like really good and something. I mean, I
And
thought a
that's
lot
new
about.
things, I don't remember that for mine.
And something I never thought about, but
Yeah, that was really smart.
Yeah.
I think that that's something so important to share with families too, because like I said, there's so many times that families will come in and be like, oh, I tried to trick my kid by adding in
right.
peanut butter into their smoothie. I'm like, did you, what?
But I think with our older kids, like having them be a part of it, like Tali is my prime example, like never ate vegetables and parents are still like, she doesn't eat vegetables, and I was like, she eats sun-dried tomatoes, zucchini muffins, carrot cake bites, carrot muffins, sweet potato muffins, and like she can't tolerate raw vegetables yet, but she can do them in muffin form, so that like problem solving of like, okay, they can do soft textures, how can you get that fruit and vegetable in there, but not hiding. Tali is 100%, as you all can see, a part of the cooking experience, and it's made her, a year ago, she wouldn't touch green vegetables, and 2 weeks ago, she put pea soup on her chin, which is like very weird, very green, very bright green. And then yesterday, she ate whole raw tomatoes, and like helped me make homemade tomatoes as soup, and like didn't elope one time. So like using those like cooking opportunities to not hide it, but also to use it as exposure.
And I think that like honesty is just so important. Like I feel like a lot of the feeding kids that I've had like have had so much trauma with like the lying about the food and the tricking about the food and things like that. And I think it's like you like feel for these parents in their moment of desperation of like you just need calories. They're like, so I just like put that protein powder in anyway, and like they really like chocolate milk, so we're just hoping for the best. And it's like, but you're still lying. Like even if like Kennedy's like a prime example where they've tried a lot of different things and they're like very receptive to it now, but like they've said like they've tried things where they would trick her, but it's like she knows that they're tricking her, and now it's like she doesn't trust. Like the big thing is like she thinks that all condiments are spicy, and Dad's like, I tell her they're not, she doesn't believe me. And I'm like, because in the past you tricked her, like, and it's taken a long time. Like now she'll do certain ones with him, but like it's like he's had to rebuild a lot of that from like the all good intention tricking, even tricking that she like liked it. It was like still tricking.
And I think also just reminding parents that even the littlest of steps is a huge step, like up the steps of feeding. Because there's so many times that we'll end the feeding session like, wow, that was really great, and the parents are like, well, they still didn't eat it. You're right, they didn't eat it, but they also wouldn't tolerate being in the same room with it 2 weeks ago, and now they're sitting at the table.
I struggle, I don't know if you guys have good advice for this, but Emmett's mom in particular, she mentions in every session that she really wants him to start to eat ketchup. And I bring it out every time we play with chicken tenders, and he'll touch the chicken tenders, we'll play with chicken, and I'm dipping mine in ketchup. And Mom is so focused on it, and she's like, I know he's not eating it because I want him to eat it. And she like says these things all the time. And he's right there, and I'm just like, probably he's not eating it because you want him to eat it so bad. But like, I struggle sometimes with like how to approach her take on things without like being rude.
I think
Oh my gosh, she just thinks it's gonna like transform his
Yeah.
life.
Kennedy's dad has
like,
the same
why?
thought with ketchup and most condiments, and
Yeah.
what he's explained to me, I don't know if this is her thought process, but what he's explained to me is like, if I can get her to like ketchup, it's such a big flavor that we could dip anything in the
that's
ketchup,
exactly it. I think
and
that's
she
it.
would like it because she likes the taste of ketchup.
I
Like,
think
Because
that's
you
not
can
taste.
use dips as like a bridge to
Yeah.
things, but a lot of
Yeah.
kids don't like them because
Yeah.
Emmett's one. He doesn't.
The
Wanna
wet texture.
be-
Yeah, like
yeah,
yeah.
he
Did
doesn't
he
want
even do
to-
purees, or how did he do with purees?
Yeah,
And so that's part of it.
and
Yeah, like,
yeah,
he'll do, like,
and it's
apple
also
sauce
that
with
it's a
banana
mixed
and
texture in his mouth, and I
Yeah.
think it's like
Yeah.
explain it because even if she's like, well, he can do purees because he
Yeah.
drinks milkshakes or
Yeah,
whatever,
I
she's
mean, he
gonna
loves,
stay back.
he loves
like,
yogurt and he loves applesauce.
but
like,
it's the mixed
but
texture.
yeah. And yeah, I think
Well,
she
and he
thinks
would-
that he
and
could
just
just eat anything if he likes ketchup because he'll dip anything in ketchup.
I would go ranch before ketchup.
We do, and he's had ranch before, and he like will eat, and I eat ranch with carrots we've been doing that a lot lately. He'll do ranch, yeah, occasionally, like it's not frequent,
But I
but
think that education on the mixed
Yeah.
texture can be
Yeah,
helpful
that's a
because
good
that was
idea.
like, I like
Just like magically wants.
listening to him explain it. I'm like, I hear exactly where you're
Mhm.
coming from.
Mhm.
Like it,
She's like, I don't even care.
it
if he's
sounds so
eating-
logical.
She's like, even if he's eating 80% ketchup and 20% chicken, like,
Mhm.
I don't even care because it means he's like moving towards eating the chicken.
And truthfully, that's probably what she did as a kid.
Yeah.
Or he did
Yeah.
as a kid. They probably
Yeah.
dunked their food in
Yeah.
ketchup to
Mass.
eat whatever.
Yeah, exactly.
And it maybe worked or maybe didn't
Yeah.
work, but as an adult, maybe that is what works now.
But
Yeah.
also, Emmett needs to decide what he's comfortable with the ketchup. So, like, if she's telling him to eat it, he's not going to eat it.
No, exactly.
So he has to make that choice, and every kid needs
Yeah.
to make the choice of what they're comfortable with.
Yeah, yeah.
And then we validate that by not making them go past the point of where they're uncomfortable.
And like what you were saying with when you're like, that was a great session, and the parents like, oh, they barely ate anything or whatever. This week I put some like turkey meat on his plate, and I've never really brought out turkey meat. And we were touching it, he touched it, I was eating it, and Mom was like, Emmett, you ate turkey meat yesterday. Why are you eating the turkey meat? You ate this yesterday. Why are you eating it? I was like, oh my gosh, like this. So I feel like that's something I just struggle with in general with feeding is like, how much do I like
I
counter
think-
with them
I
on
think be
this
careful
day?
what step you go to, so you
Yeah,
also, so like on that list
Okay.
of steps that
Yeah,
Steph
yeah.
gave us, like make sure you're not jumping to eating
Okay.
and help him explore those lower level steps.
Okay, that's helpful.
So like with the ketchup, like will he do like blow art with the ketchup, so cut a straw long, cut a short straw, and see if he'll do blow art with the ketchup.
Okay.
With applesauce, she accidentally ate it.
Oh, there you go.
Wasn't a trick, but
But it
we were
was
doing
nice.
splatter.
It's a good accident.
And then she was like, that's not bad.
Oh, that's okay. That's a great idea. Okay, I can
But
do
yeah,
that.
you back yourself down, because if
Yeah.
she sees you eat it, then she's gonna expect him to eat it, but move up a little bit
Yeah,
more slowly.
okay, I see. Yeah. And she's wonderful. She mostly just sits there, but when she is engaged, it's like, I don't really love what you're saying, you know? But that's helpful. Thank you.
Thanks, Steph.
Well, thanks, Steph.
Thank you. That's wonderful.